Okay, here we are again. Now, last time I spoke to you, I was on the Carp Lake, Irchester, desperately trying to catch a fish called April. It was the star of the show in there. Unfortunately, the place had flooded. We had some real bad flooding that year all across the country, I remember. And it's right on the River Nene. Now, the lakes can suffer from flooding. Nothing can get out of the complex because it's otter fenced. And nothing can get into the complex, but they can, or at that time, they could swap lakes. And I believe, last time I spoke to you, I just caught a fish, which I named Ronnie Biggs, because it had come over the wall from the prison. I thought it was quite a clever name, into the car park lake. And I carried on there for, I don't know, I suppose about another month, but it became really apparent really quickly that there was a lot more fish in there, fish that shouldn't be in there, that had come out of the other lakes on the complex. And we weren't sure which fish had got out. We weren't even sure if April was in there, to be certain. But I carried on there. The water quality wasn't all that. Obviously, you get a lot of flood water in it. It was quite murky. You couldn't see through the water to identify fish, just the fact that there were a lot of smaller fish in there, like stockfish from the lake next door. And I had another couple of fish over the next couple of weeks. And then the rains came, and they came, and they came. It was biblical. And the Nene came up, and I've got an app on my phone which links to the lock gates nearest to the lake. And it's quite clever, really. You can look at the whole Nene system, and you can get a river level for each lock as you come down. And what they were doing, they were holding the water back so that it didn't flood Wellingborough town. And obviously, where the lakes are, they're low priority. It's basically floodplain. And when the next lot of rain came, I watched it on the app getting higher and higher and higher. And then when it hit 2 meters or a certain level, over it came over the fields and totally washed out the whole complex. I mean, the paths were 4 foot underwater. And like I say, nothing can escape, but it can escape the lakes you're in. And it got to a stage where I thought, I don't know that the fish I'm after are even in the lake I'm fishing. I don't know what's where. Everywhere was sodden. All the reeds were battered down. The weed beds had been ripped up and moved about all over the place. The water was the colour of cold tea. It just got to a stage I thought, this isn't the one, hasn't got a great lot of form, this particular fish, for getting caught in the winter anyway. So I thought I'd go off on my tour. What I normally do in the winter is I go off, I'll do socials. You phone up all your mates and you say, how about 2 days on such and such, and do a little bit over Barham, and we'll go and pick a lake in Essex, maybe one of Mitch's Essex syndicates, do a weekend there, barbecues and beer and red wine, and just a social, really. So I buggered off for the winter, but always in my mind was looking forward to the spring, getting back on the car park, and hopefully catching April, because by now I think that was the only one of the big fish in the lake that I hadn't caught, and it's called April for a reason. It always gets caught in April, so that was always in my mind. That I knew what I was going to do come the spring. But for the winter, we just buggered about, really, and I just went on tour, the winter tour. So as always with my spring campaigns, I always start too early. I always say, beginning of April, I'll get on the proper water and do whatever. It's always February. I just can't physically wait any longer. I get so excited about it, that's all I'm thinking about. So my first trip back to the car park lake was in February. As soon as I turned up, I knew I was too early. I come out the car park, down towards the car park lake, and normally you go through the bushes and up this little alleyway and then you get onto the lake. I could see the lake from just past the car park. I could see the lake behind, all the reed beds that surround it. It's thick, like Norfolk reed around all the lakes. It had all been flattened by the floods. So the water was all coffee coloured and it just looked, it didn't really look the one. So I went down and had a walk around the lake and I could tell, you know, I was there much too early. The weed beds that had died were still floating around in big black like clouds everywhere. All the margins was full of dead weed. No signs of life whatsoever. I don't think I even actually fished. I think I walked around for 2 or 3 hours and then just jumped back in the motor and went to the Woolpack, I believe, because I've still got a Woolpack ticket at the moment. And my mate Nick Forward, he was fishing the Woolpack, so I went back up there. I think we fished on Lake 8, which is like the slightly easier one, done a little bit on there. The next week, again, I was thinking it's still too early for the car park. So I had a few weeks of sort of dotting about, mainly the Woolpack, mainly just social fishing with Nick. And I caught a couple as well. You know, I think I had a 30 pounder, 33 pounder or something, and maybe a mid 20. So I was getting bites, but all the time in my mind, I'm just like, when's it going to be ready? When's it going to be ready? And I didn't want to miss April because obviously the fish is called April and it's called April for a reason. That it always gets that capture in April. So come, I don't know, towards the end of March, I decided that was it. Whatever happens, I'm going to go back on the car park lake. I'm going to knuckle down and I'm going to do my very, very best to catch that one last remaining fish. And it's the star of the show. You know, a lot of people refer to it as Northamptonshire's Black Mirror, and it does look very similar to the Black Mirror. It's an absolute stunning carp. And having caught everything that I had caught from the lake, I couldn't not catch it. You know, I had to finish the job. So like I say, eventually I sort of knuckled down and thought I'm going to just every week go to the car park lake and see what I can make of it and see what I can see. The water clarity is still not particularly good, but it was getting slightly better. And the top bay, which I call Birdcage Bay, and I've no idea why, because it's actually called Keepnet Bay, but I've always called it Birdcage Bay. That seemed to be like a holding, a very, very small bay, and it seemed to be like a holding area for quite a few fish. And I was seeing groups of fish in there that didn't belong in the lake regularly, but I wasn't seeing any of the sort of proper big target fish anywhere else in the lake. So for a short period of time, I thought I'm going to concentrate my efforts up there just in case they're integrated. And also there was one particular mirror in there that had a very, very white tail. I don't know if he was a ghosty or whatever, but he was very bright. But he was a 40 pounder and I didn't know what he was. And I'd spoke to the owner of the complex and I'd spoke to a couple of the bailiffs and the sort of long-time members. Nobody seemed to know what fish this was, as in from any of the other lakes, because it was really distinctive. It had this white tail, not just little white tips, it had a pure white tail. And I thought, while I'm waiting to find the bigger ones and to see what's what and to sort of get something going, I might as well fish in this bay. Hopefully I'd catch this big one. And who knows, the other ones might be up there as well. Now the bay's normally, it's got a big bed of pads on the mouth of it and a bed of pads on the other side, and it's a little bit enclosed. But this time of year, after the floods, it was all wide open. The reeds had gone, the pads had gone. And I realised it was possible to cast singles, or a single, one rod, further into the bay than you normally would, because there was absolutely nothing there to get tangled up in. It was just a wide open entrance to this little bay. So I started off fishing like that for a couple of weeks and had my first fish of the spring. I think he was a mid-20 common, and then I had a 24-pound mirror, I think, the week after. I was getting them on singles right up in this bay, and then I had one on a bag just out of the bay and realised that things were starting to hot up a little bit. You know, the fish were actually getting their heads down, starting to feed. The water clarity was getting a little bit better every week. The dead weed had all drifted off and sunk or whatever, been dragged out. The reeds, little green shoots of reeds had started to poke through, and it was getting a little bit more spring-like, and the things were starting to hot up. But I still hadn't seen at this stage Probably, I mean, when I started on the lake, there were 18 originals in there, and I'd seen 2 or 3 on a regular basis by now. The long common was always quite a visible fish. I'd caught him 3 times already, I think. But I hadn't seen April. I hadn't seen the big common they call Angel. There was a lot of fish that potentially could be missing or could just be hiding away and hadn't woken up yet. So it was a bit of an unknown, really. I wasn't 100% sure that everything I wanted to catch, or the one I wanted to catch, was in the lake, but I wasn't 100% sure that it wasn't. There was not a lot to go on, but I was catching fish that shouldn't be in there. Anyway, towards the end of that month, towards the end of March, I got back into the wires swim, which is where I'd done most of my fishing the year before, and I knew my spots, and I'd got, I'd been baiting it, and it was a regular area for me. I knew it really, really well. And just down to the left is a real big deep hole in the corner of the lake, and I'd sort of got it in my head that for overwintering and that, maybe there might be fish in this area, very silty. And I started just bag fishing down to the left with one rod while I fished my normal spots with the other 2. And then I caught a fish one morning. I think it was a common. I think it was 32 to 33, 32 and a half pounds, something like that, which I didn't recognise. And there was a sort of a rule, an advisory at the time. Anything you caught, if you didn't know what it was and you wasn't, you couldn't say for sure it lived in that lake, photo of each side, put it back in a sack, send the photos to the governor. He'd let you know, look through the records where it belonged. And sure enough, this 32 pounder, it was called Big Pecks, belonged in the big lake right next door. So I just put it back in the big lake. And it sort of made me realise that there could been a lot more swip swap going on than I first thought. Anyway, about 4 or 5 days later, I'm at home and I got a phone call that April had been caught. I was like, oh God, sort of missed out on it. I said, where from? They said, from the big lake. So for 6 weeks or whatever it was, I'd been fishing on the car park for April, hadn't even been in there. And it wasn't the first time either. Apparently the year before in the floods, it had done exactly the same and been caught early. I think it was the 1st of April or something it got caught, and it had been put back in. So it wanted to be in the big lake. It had made it to the big lake and it had spent God knows how long in there. But at least now I knew whatever else was in the car park lake or whatever else wasn't in the car park lake, April, the one I wanted, was definitely 100% in the right pond. So that was a good place to start.
Quite a small one. There it is. Nailed. That's all you get. Whoa. Freezing. Never got any of that on video. That was all a bit desperate. There we go. £20 14 common. Slightly larger. Just sort of tip all around, and we're in. Feels like a proper one. Really don't feel like a stop. Right, I spoke to Mark, sent him pictures. It's a big lake fish, which is very handy because the big lake's just here. This is a big lake swim. Right behind me, the 30s, which is where I do my photos. So, yeah, all good. So there we have it, this morning's result. But hopefully not the last result of the trip. First morning, first bite. Yeah, right chunky old headed thing. Gnarly old bugger though. Oh, it's cold. Oh, it's brutal.
So I think the following week, I think I went off again for a social up the Woolpack with Nick, because, you know, although I knew it was back in the car park, I wasn't thinking it was going to get caught straight away within a week. So I went back up there, had another social with Nick, and then we've got, what, two to 3 weeks of April left, and everything's starting to warm up like really quickly. I don't really remember last April, but it got quite hot. In fact, some fish on some lakes spawned in the last week of April, or start having a little go at spawning, which is ridiculously early. It got very hot very quick. The water quality was getting better and better by the day. Now, at the opposite end to the birdcage bay is what I call the car park bay, because it's closest to the car park. And it's an area I'd caught a lot of fish, and I really like fishing, and somewhere that I'd sort of earmarked as being a very, very possible spring sort of area for them to get, because it's shallower, it's sheltered most of the time, it gets a fair bit of sunlight in the day. There's a huge great willow with a ladder strapped up against it, so it's a great vantage point for looking down into the lake. And I'd been doing little bits in there. I'd been putting a little bit of bait in there. If I was doing a 3-nighter, I'd do one of the nights in there. Anyway, when I went back after the Woolpack, climbed up the ladder, looked down there, and sure enough, there were fish coming in. It's not a sort of area where you're thinking they're there in the night, but they come in about 10 o'clock in the morning. You wait for the sun to clear the top of the tree and, you know, the shadow change, and then you see them drifting in, going down into this corner. It's about 2 foot deep in the corner. They mill about in there a little bit, and out they go. And, you know, it's a good area to set your traps and be ready for them, which I did on the next session. I think I might have caught one that trip. The following week, which was the last week of April, I thought if I was going to do a capture, an April capture, obviously it's got to be this week. We're running out of time. There's only a few days of the month left. And the forecast was blinding. It was really, really warm for that week. Very, very light winds. And the fish in the car park lake, they love a floater. And although it was early in the year for floater fishing, I know that they really like a floater. And through floater fishing the year before, which hardly anybody does on the lake, I was told when I joined, oh, they don't have floaters in here, you know, which you get on a lot of lakes. What that means is people don't float a fish on there, but they do love a floater. And I knew from watching them that April was one of the main floater feeders. It loved it on the surface. It was always on the surface. Regularly throughout the summer, the first fish you'd see pop up, you'd see this. April's got, like, when she hits the surface, there's almost a little dent where the dorsal starts. So it looks like 2 humps, jet black, and you'd see that fish on the surface much, much quicker than the others. So I knew there was a good chance, or a chance, if we could get anything up feeding on the top, she might be one of them. And I knew she was in there. That was the main thing. Anyway, I started off in the wires. I don't think I even did the night in the wires. Later in the afternoon, I saw a fish come out, like just breach in this car park bay. It was only the next swim along. And I thought I should stick with my plan. I should get in there, wait for it to warm up. I'd got 3 nights, and hopefully they'd come in. Anyway, it was the second day of my session. In the morning, it was mid-20s, I think. It was a really, really nice day. And by about 11 o'clock, there was about half a dozen fish milling about in this area. Fired a few floaters out, and one of them come up. It was only a stocky, but started feeding, and I thought, right, this is the one. They're definitely up for it on the top. So I went to the barra, I got the floater rod out, bearing in mind that the floater rod hadn't been unzipped for 6 months or more or whatever since the previous summer. I've unzipped the bag on the floater rod, pulled it out, and straight away I've looked and I thought, that ain't right. The reel, I hadn't got the drag lever on the front, you know, the disc, the front of the spool wasn't there. Obviously, at some time in the winter, I'd been mucking about with different rods, doing a bit of this, that, zig fishing, whatever, and I'd borrowed it for a different rod, which was at home in the garage. So I'd got my normal fishing rods, I'd got my floater rod without a spool cap on it, and I've got a marker rod, which did have a spool cap on it. I thought, that's all right, that doesn't matter, I can swap and change. You know, when I want to do marker fishing, I'll put that on there. When I want to do floater fishing, I'll put that on there, same reels. So it weren't a great drama. Anyway, so I set up the floater rod, pinged it out there, had a go, and they weren't that interested really. And towards the afternoon, they sort of drifted off. And just on sort of last knockings, a big fish came in with this double lump. Big dark fish came in. I'm using these little tiny floater pellets at the time. And it came in and it just nailed them. You know when they're frothing and they're blowing bubbles and they're munching as fast as they can to sort of get in a frenzy, if you like. And it was drinking them off the surface. And I shot up the ladder and had a look, and sure enough, it was, I couldn't be 100% it was April, but it was about this long and it was jet black. It was a big fish, so you know the main contender was April. So I set the floater rod back up, I'd put it back on the marker rod by now, took the disc off, put it on the floater rod out there. But it was all a little bit late in the day and she drifted off. But I knew that it was willing to visit the area, I knew it was up for floaters, and I knew exactly what my plan for the following day was going to be. Well, the gulls came in and done me. Loads of them. There's still a couple of fish about. No bait out there apart from mine now. It's going to be hot. But I've not seen April. I've seen two quite big ones. There's a pale mirror with a big fat belly. Hangs down underneath it like Jack the Net Ripper used to. You know, waddles about. I don't know what he is. And then there's a dark one, which was the one that was taking all the floaters. Oh, there's a fish here about 8 foot in front of me. I can see him without my shades even. Let's put them on and have a look. Right there, I did fire some floaters there. The gulls there. That's the black one again, the dark one. He's feeding. Let's have a quick go at him. Oh, it's all back on. As soon as it warms up, it's all manic again, isn't it? Keep going and going and going and going. Well, it's nearly dark and just got to get the floaters back out. One came up here, swirled a couple of times and put his head out. And I fired a couple of mixers, like mini mixers, and it started nailing them. And I swear it's that same big dark one that had it in my bait in its mouth first chuck. Proper Pac-Man in them, absolute gimme. I thought, oh, here we go. So I flicked bait behind him, put it in position, and he was going for it. And mine was right in the middle, and the gull saw him, came over. I swear, the gull was taking baits out of its mouth, spooking it, and it practically bouncing off of it. Then two more came in, and he off. He was bang up for it. Oh, he might be back. There's a little swirl under the surface. I've left my controller out there. Still no closer to being set up. But I have decided I am doing the right thing. They're still in here now after all my bombing and smashing. See all that? All these big ripples. My heart's pounding. He come up, he took the one next to it. He must have touched the line with his face or something. Oh, I thought it was my one. He just erupted on the surface. He is a big one. I don't know if he's coming back now. I struck anyway, just in case. Fuck me, that was close. So like I said, generally it's not a night area. The previous year when I was catching fish from the Wires, which is next door, when the lake was quiet, I was night fishing in the Wires, packing up at, I don't know, like 8 in the morning, fishing the Carp Bay for the day, back doing that like 3 times in a session. You can't always guarantee, you know, if somebody goes in one of them, you've lost your little plan. But sometimes they do get in there at night and they do stay in there at night. And this particular night, they must have moved in throughout the night, because I heard a couple of fish in the night and early hours of the morning, I think it was. I had a bite off the bottom and I had a mirror, I think it was around mid-30, something like that, which I didn't recognise at all. I knew that he was an interloper, one of the sort of, you know, flood refugees, if you like. Took a couple of photos, sacked him up, and sure enough, Mark said to me that it belonged in the lake behind, in the big lake again. So I moved him back and got all sort of settled in, ready for the day. Now, The car park bay, I've got 2 spots on the bottom, on the right in the bay, where I'm happy to fish on the bottom. I've never ever found anywhere I can get a bite for the 3rd rod. So I spent a lot of the morning plumbing around out to the left. There's like some overhead wires, power lines there, and you see fish there all the time. And I was plumbing around under there while I was waiting I didn't want to make too much disturbance in the actual bay to stop the fish coming in. So I spent a lot of the morning plumbing under these wires. Found a couple of spots that I was half happy with. And about lunchtime, something like that, brought everything in, went up Tesco's, got myself some supplies, came back, and it wasn't until I got up to the supermarket I realised quite how hot it had become. It was like a really, really nice summer's day, but where I'm fishing, I'm under this big willow and I'm in the shade. Anyway, as I've come back round, the car park bay is set in a corner, and there's a little swim called Bangers, I think it is, on the mouth of the bay. And it's one of those situations where you can fish either swim, but if somebody's in one, you can't fish the other. And nobody ever fishes this Bangers because it's set right back in the reeds. It's very, very swampy, and it hasn't got the ladder, and the angles are just better from the car park bay. But it's a great vantage point because you can go in there nice and quietly if you've got like wellies on, wade into the little swampy bit, and you're where you're casting to. You know, you're right up close and personal. So I wandered down to the front of the swim and had, really quietly, and just paddled out in this little shallow bit and had a look. And I see this one fish coming, mid-20 common, something like that, only a few inches under the surface, just slowly ambling into the bay because they love this little bay where I was fishing in the sun. And I've looked out down the lake and I can see a couple bow waving about in the lake. And then I've seen this double black hump, and it's come round and it's almost pointed straight at me. It's swum towards me and it's turned round parallel to my bank, and it's just touching the surface like that. And I've grabbed my phone out and I've done a little bit of video of him as he's just breaching the surface, and I can, it's a big black fish. Although in my mind, I know it's April, I didn't want to admit to myself that I was that close to it. So I was just calling it the big black one in my mind, but it, deep down I knew which fish it was. And it's just touching the surface slowly, all the time in the world, breaking the surface, pushing the scum apart and coming across in the sun and making its way into my bay. So from the point it's gone past me, it's only got 4 or 5 rod lengths, and then it's down in front of the willow. I grabbed my shopping, shot back round there, through the shopping and a bit up the ladder, looked out there and I can see it coming round, just doing little circles in the bay. Oh, this is handy. Fired a few floaters out there. It's come in, it's come up, it's straight away, it's nailed a few of the floaters. So I've got the float rod out there, pulled it in front of it. I've set the floater in front of it really gently. It's looking the other way. It's turned round, it's come up, opened its gob, and it's nailed the floater straight away, first attempt. And as my arm's gone like that to strike it, it's gone and just spat it out and then turned around. Didn't spook, and then carried on eating all the other pellets. And I'm just like, oh my God, it was that close. My bait has been in its mouth. My obsession carp, the hook's been in its mouth for that long, and then it was out. I was like, oh. Anyway, he milled about for a few hours. This fish came in, he was the only one eating floaters. There was other fish there, but it was always him eating floaters. But the gulls on Irchie, because you've got these power lines, are an absolute nightmare. The gulls sit on these power lines. If you put floaters out, sometimes they come in and take them, and sometimes they won't notice them. But if a fish comes up and takes a floater, and I think this is the same on a lot of lakes, that's what the birds see. They see a fish feeding on the surface, know there's food there. So the gulls were coming in, I was trying to spook them off. You know what it's like when you floater fishing. You just get in a frenzy with it. You get in such a temper with everything going wrong. You get everything right. The gulls will come in. You just get rid of the gulls. You turn your back for a second. The swans will come in, and then 2 coots will come out, and then a family of mallards with all the. It was just a nightmare in there. But April was in there and feeding, so I carried on and on and on. It was getting hotter and hotter and hotter. Anyway, it got to, I don't know, it must have been about 5 o'clock, something like that, maybe even 6 o'clock. It was the evening time, still warm. And I remember I was doing a video blog at the time. I remember just winding everything in, sitting on my bed chair. Oh no, I wound everything in. I'd taken the floater, the clutch thing off of the floater rod and put it on my marker rod. I was determined to find my left-hand spot. I'd put my marker out there. I'd found a little spot. I'd popped the marker up. And I just thought, you know what? It's been a busy day. I've been running round and round in circles. Before I bait up, before I do everything, get everything set for the night, because everything had drifted out of the bay, I'm going to sit on my bed, do a little bit to camera, have a nice cold beer, and I think I bought myself some like little treats, like, I don't know, smoked salmon and biscuits and stuff, whatever. Anyway, I sat on my thing. So I'm just going to have an hour chilling out and do absolutely nothing, just do a little bit of chat to camera and have a nice cold beer. I've been on the bed about 5 minutes and I looked up and it came back. The big black one, the big hump, April, came charging straight back into the bay, exactly to where it had been, doing little circles. It was looking for more floaters. I knew it was. And I thought, one more chance? Should I have one more go at it? But yeah, go on in. So I put the bucket of bait down the front, put out one pouch full of mixers. As soon as it hit the surface, the gulls have just peeled off of the lines and come in and started taking them. And I was just like, this is just, I'm driving myself mad with this. It's not going to work. And I thought, I know, I'll try and feed the gulls off. So I moved the bucket to the other side where my marker was out there, and I just started heaving them in, like mixers after mixer, great big cloud of bait. Sure enough, the gulls moved over to that. The fish had disappeared. I knew he was there, but I couldn't see him. And I was feeding and feeding these gulls, and they were squawking and going mad and all fighting over the mixers. And just out of the corner of my eye, I saw April come up, or I assumed was April, and start feeding heavily, probably 15 feet from where I stood, 18 feet, like there, right there. A couple of rod lengths at the most, coming up, nailing these little pellets. There was only a few left there, obviously, because the bulk of them had gone to feed the gulls. I got my marker out there on the thing, got my floater rod against the tree with no clutch on it, no disc on the front. I don't know what you call that bit on the front, but you know what I mean. So I thought, there is a chance. So I've taken the disc off the marker rod, which is laid on the floor. I don't want to move the marker because I've found this little spot for the evening. It was really, really hard to find. So I put that in the line clip, taken the front off, put the front on the floater rod, flicked it out there, pulled it past it like that. And a couple of gulls are getting a bit interested now because I'm doing stuff over there. So I've sort of tucked the rod under my armpit, got some more bait and just to feed the gulls. Then the swans have started to come in. So I'm trying to shoot the swans without scaring this fish that's feeding. So I've got half of me's looking that way. I've got one eye that way and one eye that way. And I'm trying to get rid of the birds and I'm trying to get rid of the swans. And I've turned around like that and I've just seen a swirl. And as I've seen a swirl, I've seen the controller. It didn't shoot off or anything, but the controller just turned like that, face towards the swirl. So I just went like that on the off chance that it had taken the hook bait, and it erupted. It went absolutely mental. There was this huge explosion on the surface and it just shot off across the top. It was, yeah, undoubtedly this fish. And it shot off across the surface. It's renowned, April, for being the hardest fighting fish you're ever likely to hook. It's like a marcia or something, and it just shot off across the surface. There was a huge bow wave coming behind it. My mate Marcus was fishing in the swim on the other side, and I see his head pop up like a meerkat. You could see what was going on. And this massive bow wave, the clutch was absolutely screaming, and it made off for the middle of the lake. Proper powerful fish. So I'm slowly trying to, put pressure on it, but not too much. I'm well aware I think I was using a size 8 or a size 10. I think it was an 8 chod hook, little Cardinal chod hook. Obviously you're floater fishing, so you've got a floater hook link on it. It's not the sort of gear you're going to be stopping a fish dead in its tracks, not a fish like this. So I'm putting a little bit of pressure on, just trying to slow it down. It's going further and further out into the lake, and eventually I've managed to stop it. It's probably 40, 50 yards out in the lake. Bearing in mind I've hooked it here, under the rod tip, 40, 50 yards out in the lake. And then it's done a hard kite round to the left. The line's cutting, you can almost hear it going through the surface layer, and it's going round to the left. And I've looked up, at where it's going, and there's my marker float, and there's the line going like this towards my marker float. And I thought, oh no, this is a nightmare. So I've gone to sort of wind the marker float down to the bottom and realised I can't wind the marker float down to the bottom because I've got no clutch on the front. I've got nothing. It's just in a clip. It's on the top. So I've had to pick up the marker rod, and I've got the fish in this hand, the marker rod, and then walk right to the back of the swim until I think I was in about 12 foot of water. So I've got to pull the marker down 12 foot until it donks on the bottom, and then ram the rod on the floor, and then go back down to the front and play this fish. And the fight was epic, absolutely epic. Every time I got it close, and by close I mean like sort of 3 or 4 rod lengths out, there'd just be another massive, great big oily swirl on the top, and waff off he'd go again and again and again. But the runs get shorter and shorter and shorter. Eventually I've waded out there to meet him, and it's come up, rolled over and gone in, and as it's gone in the net I can just see this big black side of it, and it's got one scale in the side, and it's just gone in, and I know exactly what fish it is. It's April. It's the last day of April, and I've got April. It's gone in the net, and when you're fishing for a target fish, that feeling, that euphoria, that release is quite often extreme. When I look back, because I had a camera running, when I looked back at the footage, it was beyond extreme. I went mental. I didn't, I knew I wanted that fish more than anything else, but until I saw that footage afterwards, I don't think I realised how much I wanted it. I just went crazy. I was just shouting and screaming and yahooing and whirring, and you can hear Marcus in the background shouting back, yeah. Threw the rod down in the floor. It was just like a big wave went over me. It's like the best feeling in the world, because I'd been after that fish for a year, and there it was in the net, absolutely stunning, like just the Nene Valley's finest. And eventually I'd got it, and I'd got it on a floater, and I got it up close and personal. Everything, all those elements combined, it was just the best moment ever. Right, I've got my stuff from the van. I've just stopped in Bangers. Look at that. See him? Right in the edge. I'm hoping that eventually, oh yeah, there they are. I was going to say I'm hoping they're going into mine, but there's one going in. I think they wait for that to get round there before they go into mine. I think mine's a better afternoon. Look at the hump on that bugger. He's a good one. Made the stupid mistake of trying to put 5 or 6 floaters out. Look, I think he's back. The old big black back one. And I think he's on the lookout. I think that's the one that we just saw from Bangers. I wish I'd filmed this. This is some of the best floater angling I've ever done. I said about 200 gulls to the left, about 3 or 4 meters to the right. I think it's blackback.
I've been waiting for you.
It's not going back a bit, mate.
Yeah.
Well, the fish ain't bad, is it? Takes them what we're here for.
Caught it.
Not the best, mate.
Holy. Oh my God.
That's the shot. So, as you can see, a stunning fish. You can see why you can get obsessed with a carp like that. It is absolutely just a jewel. It's beautiful. And that sort of, because that was, I say, the last day of April, put me in a position that I'm not often in. I'd got the Woolpack ticket. Obviously, I've still got the Irchester ticket. I've got the big lake right next door, which I know and knew I was going to fish. I really wanted to get on there, but with the timing with that, it never gets busy up there. So if I say, oh, it gets busier, that, you know, that's relevant to what it's normally like, which is really, really quiet. But if it's going to get fished, it will get fished pre-spawning. So I decided already that I was going to fish the big lake after the fish had spawned, because less people fish it because they want them at the biggest weights. I don't even know what weights they're supposed to be, and I don't care. I'm not really that obsessed by weights. In fact, thinking about it, I probably didn't even mention how big April was. It was around 46 pounds. I think it was an ounce or two under 46, but like I say, weights aren't the main thing. So I had my Woolpack ticket. I had still my Irchester ticket. I joined another syndicate with some very, very big fish in, called Whitehorse Farm. Well, I call it Whitehorse Farm. And I've got a Colne Valley syndicate ticket. So I've got 4 tickets, which seems like a lot. Came about just by chance, really. You know, like buses, they all came in at once, and they were tickets that I really wanted, so I'd taken them all. So I had options of places to go, but like I say, I was in a strange and odd situation for me where I wasn't target fishing. I didn't want to be target fishing. I'd had this need to catch April, and I'd caught it, and then I wanted to just go carp fishing, you know, where it doesn't, you don't have to be on a certain lake for a certain fish. You don't have to fish the full moon in a certain swim in certain conditions because of this one creature. I could just go carp fishing, and it was really, really nice. And like I said earlier, mate Nick was on the Woolpack on Lake 7 on the Woolpack. And I love fishing with Nick. You know, we have a right old laugh, and we take a couple of Guinness glasses with us and a cool box full of cans of draft Guinness and a barbecue and what have you. So I decided I was going to go to the Woolpack for a few sessions, not make a thing of it, you know, not sort of get into anything in particular. I'd already caught the biggest fish in the lake the previous year, which isn't, it's a weird situation. There's old fish in there, which are probably the main targets. And then there's slightly newer fish, including the biggest one in there, a fish called the Boss. So it's not like you're always going for the biggest, you're going for the older ones, but I'd had some of the older ones as well. Anyway, I decided I'd have a few weeks off and just sort of say off, you know what I mean, have a few weeks, let my mind have a few weeks off and just go carp fishing with Nick and have a bit of a giggle, which I did. And I did all right, actually, to be honest. I went up there and had a few fish, one of which, I had 2 fish in a session, one of which was the Boss again, and the other one was a fish called the Saddleback Common, which I'd also caught the year before, which sort of started to sow the seed in my mind that maybe the Woolpack wouldn't be somewhere that I'd stay for too much longer. you know, I don't want to catch the same fish over again. I hadn't caught them all out there by any means. But I'd done a year on there. I'd fished it quite hard the year before, and you know, it wasn't the place I wanted to be the most, but I wanted to be there with my mate and having a laugh. So I did a little bit on there, had a few fish, and thoroughly enjoyed it. It was nice to just kick back and have a giggle and what have you. The weather was nice. We did a bit of floater fishing on pit 8. We both had a couple of fish. I had a real ancient one called the Snake, I think it is, off the surface from pit 8. Not a big fish, can't remember, mid-20 or whatever. Great big, long, old, all its little fins were withered away, and you know, proper old character. So I was just enjoying my fishing. And I had this White Horse Farm Syndicate, which has got some massive fish in there, absolutely huge. At this moment in time, it's got a fish in there that will probably be a PB for me, and my PB is back from the Island Lake days, is 58.12, I believe. So a fish bigger than that is a big fish. It's a fish that has done 60, and like I say, right now, today, could well be 60 again. Dropped right down after spawning, has gone back up. So we're talking big fish. There's a couple of other 50s in there and some real nice big long commons. So before I sort of got into anything, while I was waiting for the big lake fish to start spawning, and you know, it was a strange spawning year. I remember that, like I said, reference to earlier, end of April, some fish started spawning. July, fish were still spawning on different lakes. It was because the weather was up and down, and we had a lot of brief, very hot spells. The spawning was very sporadic all over the place. But with 4 tickets, I could bounce about. If one lake started spawning, I could go somewhere else. So I went down to White Horse and did a few sessions on there. I think I did maybe 4 trips in 6 weeks, something like that. There's some time restraints on there on what you can do and how often you can go, which I had to work around, and it's quite a journey for me. But I did a bit down there, and I really like the lake. It's like really interesting lake, I say, full of big fish. And I did well. You know, it's nice to get off the mark straight away and sort of get into a lake. I had a couple of good trips down there. I had 2 fish on, I think might have been my first trip, including a 41-pound common, which was just this huge, nearer 4 foot than 3 foot, this massive, great torpedo. I think the following week I had a 38 common, I think it was, something like that. And I had another sort of mid-30 common the week after that. So I was doing quite well on there, quite enjoyed the lake, but like I say, it has got time restraints on it, and it's a big journey for me, so I wasn't ever going to be flat out on there. And just sort of bounced about really between White Horse, the odd trip up the Woolpack. I didn't go back to Irchester deliberately because, like I say, I was waiting for the spawning to finish, and then I wanted to get on the big lake.
Here he is, we got him! Bagged him! Boomer! Boom! Carp! So here we go. Not very long floater fishing today. We have what we've decided is a 20-pounder, and he's a long one. He's a bit like our Nick.
He's a bit like me, isn't he?
He is, yeah, long and lean. Look at him, he's bloody lovely.
He's lovely, him. With a hole in the dorsal.
Yeah. What a lovely carp.
Happy days.
Happy days.
In the sun. We might have a beer and crisp later.
It's beautiful. I like him a lot. Nice. Right, Nick, your turn.
I'll have a go.
Well. 2 minus 1 equals 1 in the net. Yep. Am I in that picture?
Yes.
Click off a few.
You're a big bastard. I don't know if it's the boss again, I'm not sure. He's massive.
Happy with what they look like on the screen?
Man with a fish.
2 heads and a tail.
Yeah.
Morning. How are we doing today? They're very pretty. Yeah, yes you are. I often say, don't I, when we say good night, that's very romantic, unless anything happens, I'll see you in the morning. Well, something happened. A chuffing great 38 pound 2 ounce common happened. Don't worry, I will be getting rid of this horrible head torch in a minute. I've got lights and stuff everywhere. Yes, big, long. Ooh, it's got a big eye. Hello, all the better for seeing you with. Yeah, that's what I'm calling. Oh, okay, we don't want any of that old malarkey, do we? It's just ridiculous. That'll just get you in trouble. Look at him. Oh. He's bigger, isn't he? I don't know which of the two vids is going to be better, but one of them will be alright, I'm sure. Well, this is going very well. I don't know why, because it's a common, but both same both sides, but we will do the other side. He is a long old bugger. Looky there. It's a bit shiny, I know, but the video lights, only so much you can do. There's a male. It's a big old male. Whoa. Fella, slow down. Bloody hell. It's the third fault. It's a spring. Must have trodden in something. Look at him. Woo. Now, the big lake on Irchester is one that really interests me. It's a very strange, when I say big lake, it's 18 acres, which is not, you know, depends what you're used to. To some people that's huge. To me it isn't. I've fished lakes 240 acres in the past, 200 acres, 150 acres. That's what I call a big lake. But it's called the big lake and it seems a lot bigger than 18 acres. The way it's set out, it's got on one side there's 2 points and then another little bit that sticks out that's like a conservation area. So that forms 3 very large bays. It's like a back to front, it's like a 3, but like if you look at it from the top, it's like a big letter, number 3. There's a lot of bank space for 18 acres. The first time I walked around it, I didn't know how big it was, and I was chatting to someone, and I said, "What is this lake?" And he went, "About 30 acres?" And he went, "No, it's 18 acres." I was like, "No way is that 18 acres," but it is. But it's 18 acres of water in about 35 acres of land, if you like, so it does seem a lot bigger. You can't see all of the lake from anywhere at all. So I like that sort of thing where it's all convoluted and bits, and if you're not seeing fish in the first bay or the second bay, you think, well, it might all be happening up in the top bay, or it might be round the back of here, or you know what I mean? It's like you can always imagine something's going on somewhere. It's a walking lake. I spent most of my first looks at the lake just walking round and round and round. It's hard to settle anywhere because unless you're on the mother lode, you think they're somewhere else. So very interesting and exciting lake. A lot of good fish in there, quite a few big commons. There's maybe half a dozen commons over 40 pound, which is a big common, and the biggest one in there is probably high, sort of £48, something like that. So some real respectable fish and some beautiful mirrors. And like the car park lake, like anything on that complex, it's like paradise. There's a very, very low membership, that it's kept unbelievably. It's all mown grass, it's not muddy, there's no man-made swims, there's no jetties, there's no gravel traps, there's nothing like that. It's very, very natural, but it's maintained very well. It's just a beautiful place to be. So I was really, really looking forward to getting onto the big lake, but like I say, I had to hang back, wait for the spawning to start, which it did a few weeks later. And that would be my next sort of obsession water, if you like. I'd still have the white horse for the big fish, treat that more as an occasion, almost like a holiday, almost like going to France fishing. I'd go there for a session and then not go for a few weeks and spend most of my time on Irchie. So that's the plan going forward. But obviously that will be in the next instalment, which will be around Christmas time. So until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Ta-da.